After what seems like forever and ever, the movie Polaroid finally is released legally for me to see at Redbox. This thing has been talked about, and it was like released only online for like pirates and whatnot for forever. My brother watched this forever ago. People I knew watched it forever before he did. Like, this thing had been out forever, but I refuse to watch the damn thing until it came out legally. And I didn't want to pay $7 for it, so when it did come out, I think it was even $10. So when it did come out, I was like, I'm not paying $10 for this movie because no one said it was any good. Like, generic is the best I heard. And so I was like, all right. And then finally just dropped it Redbox randomly on Tuesday. I had no idea and and I saw it there and I was like, oh, perfect. And I rented that and Mary with Gary Oldman, which I'll review next. But for now, let's talk about Polaroid. So Polaroid is about a Polaroid camera. Remember those, guys? Remember those? If you're old enough like me to remember Polaroids. Polaroids are coming back. There's actually Polaroid cameras they sell in the stores now. You got vinyls in the stores. You've got all these old things in the stores where I'm like, what year is it? I feel like freaking Alan Parrish or Kyle Reese or something. I'm like, what year is it? The hell am I? What freaking time warp am I in? But yeah, so Polaroid camera, get your picture taken, and you die, essentially. And this is not something we haven't seen before. The premise is pretty generic. The movie, it's PG-13, so there you go. Yet another slight on the film before it even starts. That doesn't mean it's an absolute death sentence, but with a generic premise, it's kind of a death sentence. That said, it's a pretty damn generic movie that has promise. I didn't hate it. But I did hate that they didn't bother capitalizing on what they had set up. Because there are some cool elements to the movie. So they play around with a couple things within the movie. One of them being, why don't you just destroy the picture? You know, so that that picture doesn't exist anymore and you won't have to die because there's an apparition that appears on the picture and then that marks you for next, whatever. And so if you get rid of the picture, maybe it'll skip you or maybe it'll just outright not come to you at all. And so they try to get rid of the picture in this and something happens. And I liked what happened. And I like what also happened to the picture after. I thought that was a cool, unique little idea. Not super original, but still I liked it. And it could have been executed way, way better because essentially, I guess this is spoilery, but if something happens to the picture, something happens to you. And there is some effective ways that this is done in the movie. One in particular with the cop character. And I was like, oh, okay, that was really cool. I dug that. But then because of the PG-13 rating, they couldn't really go all in on that. I mean, this shit could have been brutal. Kind of reminds me of Tales from the Hood with the monster man. The little kid draws, remember, he draws it and then he crumples up the dad and he like folds the arm over and the arm breaks and all that. They could have played with that in an R rating and it would have been, it would have been beautiful. And then there's some exploration of the monster and then the backstory and where that goes and the twists that come out of that. And I was like, all right. The story's a little generic, but it actually takes some turns that I was like, oh, okay, I dug that. So I enjoyed that. And the monster itself has some weaknesses and yet again, kind of generic, but kind of like, all right, that could have been cool. We've seen it 1,000 times, but you could have played with it. I feel like it's a stylistic choice. The movie's very drab. Like it's very muted. It's a very ugly movie. It's really dark and not in a good way. There's nothing that pops in the movie. It just feels very bland, much like the story, much like everything else. There's like no effort being put in by the cinematographer here. it's just kind of like really lazy, dark filmmaking. It's kind of like, all right, just, it's a horror movie, so kind of make it dark. And it's like, all right, here's a real mute palette, like cool. And it's got no style to it at all. And it was gross to look at. I was like, it's an ugly movie. This is just an ugly looking movie. It kind of reminds me, if I had to compare it to anything, just kind of aesthetically, generically, all that kind of stuff, I'd say the closest movie to it is Slender Man. It's got that real like drab, muted, dark, gross looking tone. It's very generic, like everything's been done 1,000 times. It's PG-13. It's, it's just kind of, it just kind of has got that feel to it. People are liking this a little bit more than Slender Man. Slender Man got slammed, but I want to feel like Slender Man got slammed because of how late it was to the game. Like it was so late. Like it was like a movie that needed to be made 10 years ago. And so I feel like that one got a little more hated than it should have. I feel like it should be in maybe the high 4s, mid 4s, but like a low 3. That's insane. IMDb, it's like a 3.3 or something. That's crazy. This is like a 5.1. That seems high. This should be like 4.8. I think that's more realistic. 4.7, 4.8. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. For some reason to me, like just below average is about what this movie is. Like 5.1 is just slightly above average, and this movie isn't slightly above average. It has moments, because it's a very average movie and I liked elements, I could take that as being slightly above average, but there's so many lame points, there's so many missed opportunities, there's so many poor choices, both artistically, aesthetically, story-wise, all those kinds of things, that just drags it back down. It's like, where you succeeded here, you unsucceeded so poorly that it actually drags the success down. So for me, it's like, it is under 5. Not too bad. So as I said, I think like 4.5 to 4.8 is kind of the sweet spot for where it should rate. It's not a terrible movie, but anybody who just absolutely detests anything that feels generic, you'll fucking hate it. You'll hate it. You'll be like, what is this guy talking about? The movie's too total trash. Nothing redeemable about it. I'm just not that way. I can see the beats and I can be like, all right, like on paper, this movie's okay. Which is not what you want your movie to be. That means you've taken 0 risks. I've talked about this enough. There's some cool elements, but then there's some overly generic elements. They all drag each other, kind of this way and that way. So, yeah. There you go. Polaroid. Not worth the wait. Not worth the wait. And this guy's directing something. This is why I wanted to see it. I think the movie already came out, if I remember correctly. I think it's already in existence, but I can't remember what it was. It was like a bigger movie that he's directing. I'll have to look it up after. Let me know in the comments, or anybody in the comments, so they know what I'm talking about. But I know that this guy was taking on something big. Maybe some Netflix movie, something, where I was like, all right, like I need to see what this guy's like. And then Polaroid, I don't think even came out until after it was over. So I'll look it up after. But yeah, not impressed. Not impressed. If this is his true effort, then whatever that movie is, I'm either not looking forward to it, or I can pretty much guarantee it wasn't good. So we'll see. I'll check it out after this. Adios.